that our 2 years semi-sabbatical of a regular work life has got everybody reflecting on what really is important to me. Do I really want to be working with people? Would I rather be working at home? Do I want more money? Do I want more flexibility? Do I want to have ability to, work wherever I want? I mean, all those sorts of questions. And so they're bringing that more front and center and having those conversations. What a great point. I'd never thought of it that way. So maybe let's just take one of those. I know a common one. I've actually got a show coming up where I actually interview my son. He's a 17-year-old. He works at Jersey Mike's. He's a shift manager, and a lot of the challenges is getting paid fairly. And so when you think about employees and they're thinking about, gosh, I don't feel like I'm getting paid fairly. I could make a lot more money if I leave. That's a form of conflict. Any tips and recommendations on how you have those conversations, how you start that path of trying to find a healthy compensation or healthy balance to kind of make it work for everybody?
Well, I think, and what's actually personally worked for me, is that the conversation can't just be like at that moment when you're at the end of your rope, like I'm going to leave because I'm not getting enough money. I think it's something you have to work on throughout your career. And there's a piece of advice I got from my parents when I was very young, and it really has just become my habit, that it's things like keeping your resume up to date always, the moment you start a new job, and doing it all the time. And also keeping that list of successes. You might not share it and send it out to your boss, but keeping that list and figuring out ways to promote what you do and share it with others, because I think a lot of us sit back and assume that everyone's observing us and they're going to pay us what we deserve because of all the great things we did. But we have to actually proactively manage that, because our managers and supervisors are dealing with the same issue, that they're wanting the more money and they want to make sure they're paid for every success. So they're not really observing everything you're doing and keeping track of it. So I think it's like an ongoing conversation, so that it's not like that in the moment, like, hey, I need more money or I'm leaving.
Beautiful. So I'm curious I'm going to dig into that a little bit more. It's this fine balance of not acting too comfortable. I mean, you don't want to say, well, I'd love to get more money, but, I understand you've got constraints and you just whatever works for you. That's one extreme. The other extreme is you have until Friday to make a decision or I quit. I mean, that's another extreme. How do you create the right balance of urgency or intensity around that, but not put too much pressure on it?
Well, I mean, sometimes you need the pressure on.
Okay.
But know that you're going to, it can't be an empty threat. That's how, if you really want to leave, if you don't get it, then it's okay to say that. But do not say it if you're not ready to leave. I had that experience. There was one time, and plus it wasn't a long-term employer. My employer was already bankrupt. However, I knew I had a few more years with them because at the time I was running real estate and I needed to get rid of all of it for them during this bankruptcy process. But I was not being paid enough to do what was involved. And I did. I showed all the information, the industry, other similar positions, what people were being paid, what revenue they were getting from all the work I was doing. And I said, if you don't resolve this in the next month, I will be going for another job. But I meant it, and I was going to move on. I would have never threatened that if I had not been able to know that I would have walked away. But if you're at that desperation point, is the money enough? I asked myself that too. Like, it's not just the money. I've often asked for other things, not just the money, because I'll look at the budget and go, you know what? I know it's January. They're not going to all of a sudden give me more money and fight for a bigger budget for me. But what can I get that might not be like specific money out of their pocket, so to speak? Everything from conferences I wanted to go to on my own, but I was going to be using vacation time for my like personal growth. Hey, can we not count this as vacation? Those are some of the creative things to think about. Of course, it depends on the situation, but think of all those like benefits you can just kind of add in that won't cost someone money. Like,
so I'm going to go down that path a little bit. So now one of the big ones that everyone's wanting to negotiate is flexible work schedules or flexible presence in the office.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you balance that? There's been cases where, particularly when people are paid a certain standard of living to live in more expensive regions of the United States, like New York City or San Francisco, and then, then they want to still have that same salary, but they want to then move to a less expensive place. So that creates some tension. If you are an employee and you were employed by one of these places, but you want to continue to have a flexible work situation, how might you consider some of those trade-offs and how to have that conversation?
Before having the conversation, figure out what you really want rather than just kind of getting on this train where everyone's saying, oh, I want to work remote all the time. Make sure that's what you really want, because I think there's many people who don't really want to work remote all the time. Figure out what kind of balance you want. And even for your job and your company, does it make sense for you to be remote every single day and all the time? So figure out what a more ideal equation would be. Of course, go back to like the pandemic and look at, hey, what has been working? Why has it been working well? Because you've had time to think on your own. You've had that private time rather than being in that big fishbowl of the office where there never is thinking time. What would be a better balance? When you have all that information, I think it becomes a different conversation, because it starts with like, hey, we know what's worked well during the last 2 years. Now, some of it's going to change because we're not all going to be remote. But some of that remote time we need to keep, because this, and this have not only happened during that time, but we've done better with it.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that.